Here we are at WFM 88.1, a very small but wonderful radio station in South Florida, Christian radio station. And I'm very, very lucky and very honored to be with the host of the show, of the morning show, Brant Hansen. Hi, Brant, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very well, thank
Good.
you. It's a nice, finally putting a face to the voice.
It's always a shock, too. It never works out. Even if you just talk to somebody on the phone, they're like, you don't look like what I thought.
Tell us a little bit about Mornings with Brant. It's from 6 to 10, tough wake-up call.
6 to 10 is really early, and which is hard, too. If you're not a morning person, I'm not either. So it's hard, like at 6 a.m. I'm in here, and I'm standing here, and I'm trying to wake up, and it's even become a joke. It's just how tired I am at 6 a.m.
That's funny. So why a morning show? Why not a late night show?
Well, you know what? Late night show would just interfere with family life so much because I got kids and a wife and we have friends, and when you do a show at night, you're just not home.
How does a little boy from Assumption, Illinois, ends up doing radio here in South Florida?
It's weird being from a small town to here. I just think God's got a plan for everybody, and I don't know sometimes if it's that specific, like God wanted me to go to South Florida, but I do think He wanted me to do radio.
What happened to Farewell to Juliet?
Oh,
What's
my
going
goodness.
on?
Our CDs are still out there, but my friend was literally, he was the best man at my wedding, and the guy that I collaborated with musically is literally a rocket scientist. And so he moved to Los Angeles to work for an aerospace company, and it became a lot more hard for us to collaborate musically.
What's going on in your mind when you wrote something like, I lost my head, I somehow lost my mind, I lost my train of thought. I get like this sometimes. Is that true, Mr. Hansen?
Yeah, you know what? I wrote that song for my wife. And that song's called Browning's Pearl, and it's about apologizing. That's literally what I mean. I lost my head, I wasn't thinking straight, I'm so sorry. And I found that being married means apologizing a lot.
Well, talking about that, my dad used to say something very funny. He used to say that being wrong is really being right in disguise.
People just want to know, do you love them or not? Bottom line.
Why do you think it's so hard, apologizing?
Pride.
Pride.
I want to be
Ego.
right. I want to win arguments. But I have found, and I think this is spiritual maturity, I think it is. The longer you are a believer, hopefully there's maturity, I think it is, to be able to say, I really don't have anything to lose by being wrong.
What's going on these days with commitment?
Sometimes people think there's God over here on this shoulder, and there's Satan over here, and there's this battle going on between the two. I don't think that's what's happening. I think the choice is between God and us. It's God and me. And Satan is cheering me on, that I'll choose me over God as my final authority. And I honestly feel like the commitment thing is about, if I'm worshiping me, I want to keep all my options open. I don't want to tie myself down to anything. I want to be the one that's the final authority that decides, here's what I want to do now. Now I want to do something else. And so freedom becomes the ultimate goal. I want to be free to do whatever I want. And I've found that people conceive of committing to God, committing to marriage, committing to causes as a loss of freedom. And so if freedom is the most important thing, you don't want to do all that stuff because you're sacrificing your freedom. I think it's a fear of losing freedom. The irony is, if you don't commit, you don't have any poetry in life. I'm convinced of that. You'll wind up being, if you decide, I'm not going to commit myself to anything larger than me, you're going to be a very lonely old person when you're 70.
Tell me, Brant, who is the kindest person you've ever met in your life?
I traveled in Calcutta once and visited Mother Teresa's home for the sick and dying, and met this guy who was in Calcutta who was a believer, and he was my age. He was a really fun guy. He was always talking about, welcome to the city of joy, and he'd talk, and he'd talk, and he'd talk, and after a while I'm like, man, I'm getting a headache, dude, you just keep talking. But he'd travel around and show us around. In honesty, one night we were sitting there, in fact it was in Mother Teresa's home for the sick and dying, we were trapped in a rainstorm, and we were sitting there waiting for the rain to subside one night. The nuns let us sit there. And he said, can I be honest with you? And I was like, yeah. And he described what had been happening to he and his wife in Calcutta. They'd been beaten up. They'd had their bikes stolen. They'd have their money stolen. They'd been kicked out of their park because they were believers. And he was very discouraged. And I asked him why he didn't leave. And he said it was because he felt like God had called him there. And that's where he belonged. And I remember leaving from the airport. He dropped us off and he was smiling and waving. I'm thinking, man, I'm leaving. I get to go back to the U.S. And I'm looking down at him as I'm going up the escalator, like, he's staying here. This place is for me, be a horrible place to live. And it was a horrible place for him. And he was struggling with God's plan for him. But he was staying because he loved those kids so much that he worked at this compassion project. So I don't know if that's the kindest guy, but it's one of the guys I most admired. I thought, that dude's got guts.
This show is all about giving thanks and being thankful to God. What are you thankful for in life?
Oh my goodness, that's a huge thing. I am extraordinarily thankful that Jesus is who he is. I'm so glad that God is this way. I mean, the way he deals with the proud people, the way he deals with the hyper-religious people who thought they had all the answers, the way he deals with the people on the margins, the sinners, the prostitutes, the tax collectors, the lepers. Literally, if I was designing a God, and it's probably a strange way to put it, but one that was worthy of worshiping and I wanted to actually know, it'd be like him.
Imagine, Brant, for a second that you were in an elevator going to the 10th floor and this gentleman comes into the elevator with you and the elevator gets stuck and this gentleman happens to be Jesus Christ and you're with him stuck for 4 hours.
Whoa.
What do you think would happen there?
Well, if it was Jesus, I have a lot of large philosophical questions I'd like to ask, but I think I would skip them given the fact that I would know the time is limited, even 4 hours, and I would ask him on personal stuff. Like, why am I the way I am? And how do you feel about me? And I know there's a pat answer for that, like, well, obviously Jesus loves you, and he would say, I love you. Well, I would want to hear it. And I would want to be able to lay out, like, knowing that you know the way I really am. What do you think about me? And I want to hear that.
How would you feel about the leave everything and follow me?
That's a hard one.
That's a tough one.
That's a real hard one. And I'd want to know how that shakes out. Like, what really do you want me to do? Because I've heard a lot of different impressions of what that really means, to leave him or to leave everything behind and follow Jesus. And I know that's what he was asking us to do. He didn't ask us to accept him. He asked us to follow him. I guess I'd want to know, am I on the right track here? Where's my heart, not yours? And you know what? I'd probably be like that dude who got to talk to him and said, you got me. I do believe you, but help me where I don't believe you.
Brant, I'm very curious. We have tons of emails from our viewers asking about the toasters, and I don't see any toasters in the studio.
You know what happened? They kicked my toaster out. The building manager came, and I had it plugged in over here, like sitting next to our stuff. And apparently it's a fire hazard.
Oh no.
So I had to kick it out, but we have some in our little break room over there where I'm allowed to keep it. And I'm not supposed to have one in my office, but I do, but I keep it unplugged, so.
Thank you very much for being with us today. This is Straight from the Heart. My name is Christina Plotkin.
I lost my head. I somehow lost my mind. I lost my train of thought. I can get like this sometimes. Those words I said, well, I should have been insane. Perhaps